Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Been a bit of an interesting time here at Rocks and Stocks News lately. I've had some challenges with my sponsorship, in that I've lost some of my sponsors recently, and some are not renewing. Which has significantly impacted the revenue from sponsorship, which, is a challenging thing for what I do. But I'm a resilient guy, and I never stop, and this is not going to slow me down. I'm also very fortunate that because of the goodwill that I've built up since doing my report starting in 2005, I have access to talking to some of the industry leaders, and a lot of them are very big supporters of the work I do and help me out when they can. And I really appreciate that, and it gives me a lot of confidence that I'm doing what I should be doing, which is trying to be an advocate for the industry, the mining industry. I think it's very important for everything in our lives that revolve around the need for metals. Specifically, I think that the exploration sector needs the biggest help, and I try to provide that by shining some light on the exploration projects that I think are very strong stories. And I have spent 30 years in this business, so I kind of have a fairly good eye for quality, and believe that things are going to get better. The sentiment in the sector right now is pretty dismal, but I also believe that actions speak louder than words in many instances, and I'm seeing some actions that by big players in this business that I think are things that the regular investor, the retail guy, should pay attention to. And a lot of those came to light in a recent interview that I did with earlier this week with Rob McEwen. And I'm just going to show where you can find that, which is on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. Or you can also find all of my content relating to video presentations on YouTube at Rocks and Stocks News on YouTube. So getting on to the action speaking louder than words, I had a great chat with Rob McEwen just a few days ago, who runs McEwen Mining. Rob is a legend in the mining business. He built Goldcorp from a tiny little junior mining company into a powerhouse that was at one time one of the lowest cost producers of gold in the business, and really was a free cash generating machine, and ultimately made it one of the best performing gold mining stocks for many years. And not only did Rob build Goldcorp, he's also been a very successful investor in mining, and I also believe a thought leader in the industry. And so we sat down and had a great conversation, and it started out, we were talking about the debt situation, and in the United States, the payment on the debt servicing is now over $1 trillion, which makes it one of the highest expenses that the federal government has to cover each year now. And this has been caused by, from 2008 to 2022, the interest rates were near zero, and the economy, the housing market, commercial real estate was all built on that near zero interest rates. And then in the last couple of years, they've jacked interest rates up to over 5%. And this is a problematic situation for the federal government, for the Federal Reserve, for the Treasury, and for the economy. And another thing that's recently been developing is, and we talked about this a lot, and Rob had some really good insights into what's happening with the conflicts that are happening in Russia, Ukraine, and recently in Israel and Palestine. And he was talking a lot about how the military assets of the United States are being moved around, the big war machines, if you will, being moved into near the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this also has the potential of becoming much larger in the region. Really is stretching the United States in their in not just with their military assets, but also with the cost of all of this. And it really comes down to economics to me. Wherever you stand on the wars, the bottom line to me is that the United States really can't afford to be the police of the world and be involved in multiple wars when your debt is so high and the interest payments on that debt are so dramatic. And ultimately, I think that the Federal Reserve is going to have to stop raising interest rates. When that happens and they move towards a stance that they're going to have to start stimulating again, I think you'll see that that is very detrimental to the price of the United States dollar and very bullish for gold. So then what generated the structure of the conversation that I had with Rob McEwen, and getting back to that point about action speaking louder than words, is that at the Bear Creek Mining Conference, or Beaver Creek Mining Conference, and at the Red Cloud Conference recently, Rob McEwen has shared the stage with Frank Justra. And they've been talking about not only reasons to be bullish on the mining of gold and copper and other metals, but what they're doing with their own money. And these are, you hear the words, you kind of want to follow where smart money is going, because that usually turns out to be successful money. It certainly has been for Frank Justra in the mining sector and Rob McEwen. They've made their fortunes in primarily from the mining industry. And they were talking a lot about some of the structural problems that are having with the industry. And Rob and I talked about that in the interview that we did on November 10th. We talked about the people problem. When I got into the business in the late 1990s, I was in my late 20s, and there wasn't a lot of peers in the business in my age group, or in the 20s and in their 30s, and that was called the lost generation. And there has been some improvement times of that lost generation where new people were coming in, but then you run into a harder market, and then less people are signing up to be geologists and geoscientists, engineers, and this sort of stuff, and getting into the funding part of the business, the brokers and the analysts and all this sort of stuff. And Rob was making the point about how problematic the people issue is right now, and I really couldn't agree more. He made a statement that a lot of conferences he goes to, he sees a lot of gray-haired guys, but he wasn't heartened recently by going to a conference and seeing a lot of youth. The no gray hairs getting present, and a topic that he's been talking a lot about lately is that we need to attract more of the youth into this sector. That goes without saying. And we also need to attract them as investors into the sector. And he believes that, the things have to change in the sector. Part of that is the perception of the industry of mining needs to improve. And we discussed the efforts that McEwen Copper, which is a division of McEwen Mining, is making on their copper project, and really designing a mine of the future, and something that would be attractive place to work for youth. And so I would invite you to go check out their website, where you can find more details on this mine of the future that they're building. And it's quite impressive, to say the least. And Rob has always been a innovator in the mining business. One of the real successes for Goldcorp was when they had their Goldcorp Challenge. The Goldcorp mine had been mining for many years at a marginal rate near surface. But it's an orogenic system, and these are known to go very deep. And what really was a game changer for the company was when they had the Goldcorp Challenge, and the result of that was they found the deep portion of the system. And in that deep portion, it had very high grades, very low cost of production, and really was what made Goldcorp Goldcorp. And a point that I made about his McEwen Mining is that I see a lot of similarities in their current mine to the mine at Red Lake, prior to them getting deeper into the system and finding these jewelry box deposits that were, again, low cost, high grade. And I believe that is not factored into people looking at McEwen Mining. And yet McEwen Mining is doing a lot of exploration on their gold projects. And I think that drill bit could result in major breakthroughs or game-changing breakthroughs for their gold mining operations. And so we had a great chat about McEwen Mining and McEwen Copper. And getting back to these presentations that Rob McEwen and Frank Juster have been sharing the stage, something that Rob has always been an advocate of is putting back into the exploration. He understands that with exploration success, investors do very well, and that the industry gets what's needed. Every year the mining industry mines metals, and they need to replace that for their long-term sustainability. So exploration is crucial. And then they also talked about a magical time in the mining business, which was around the year 2000. And I was working in the business back then, and it didn't feel like a magical time. It was very challenging. You had gold under $300 an ounce. Copper was about 60 or 70 cents a pound. And raising money for exploration was very difficult. There wasn't enough new development of mines to replace the mines at the time. And the result of that was the 2001 to 2011 bull market. And now that we can look back in the rearview mirror, you can see that year 2000 and the late 1990s was a magical time for building things that was then rewarded quite handsomely in the 2001 to 2011 bull market. And I see the exact same thing happening now. What's somewhat different is that we have gold at, let's say, 1950 right now, and copper at $3.50. And so the metals prices are doing quite well, but the sentiment towards the gold stocks is quite dismal, and it's really hard to raise money and to do exploration, and yet exploration and new mine development is crucial for the industry, but then for investors and for consumers, because everything you do revolves, as Robert Friedland says, it's either grown or it's mined. Without those commodities, life as we know it does not exist. And so for long-term sustainability, and we're also at another crucial and interesting period in that we've got this energy revolution where many countries and many people want to see transitions of the energy from into more solar, wind, alternative energy sources, uranium, and other things. And to build all that requires a lot of metals, specifically copper, especially copper, which is the most crucial of those metals. And so Rob and I talked in this interview about how we're at another magical time in the business. And we won't really know it's a magical time until we see it in the rearview mirror. But I believe that we are at that time. And I invite everybody to check out this interview, because I left the interview personally with a great deal of enthusiasm. I never struggled to have enthusiasm for this business because I've been in it for so long, and I know how important mining is. And it really hits home for me that what Rob talks about, how the perception of mining has to change. And now part of that is knowledge, because a lot of the bad parts of mining don't happen from the big industrial mines of the world. They happen because of the artisanal mining, and that creates a bad situation environmentally. And really, the industry of mining is very much different than that. But that's not well understood. And he really believes, as I do, that the perception has to change. And I say has to because of how important mining is to our world. Without copper and zinc and lead and silver and other metals, life as we know it just doesn't exist. The computer you use, the telephone you use, the printer you use, the refrigerator, the car, all of these things require metals. And so mining is a very crucially important thing to our future, and we need to change that perception. We need more people to come into the business. And Rob is a tireless advocate for that. And really, I try to model myself after successful people like Rob McEwen. And in reality, that's what I've always done with my shows, is and my reporting on the industry, is I try to be an advocate for the industry and for the companies that are either picks or sponsors of my shows. And I love doing it. I'm very fortunate that I have the respect of people like Rob McEwen that come on to my shows and provide information that's helpful for investors in this sector and those that are looking at McEwen Mining and McEwen Copper. And so again, I invite you to check out that presentation or that interview, because there was a lot of great information in it. So I'm on my Substack, and I'm going to scroll down here, because another exciting story that I've been talking a lot about is Goliath Resources. Goliath has a developing world-class gold project at their Gold Digger project in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. And what initially got me excited about the project is what's called their sherbet zone. Sherbet starts at the top of a mountain and it comes down a mountain. And that was the initial reason that I got excited about the company, because I could see that they had a very large, from the drilling, a very large zone that had an average thickness of about 6 meters and an average grade of about 6 grams per ton of gold. And that on its own, I thought, was a company maker. But over the winter of last year, they also had the Colorado School of Mines do a study on their and other technical advisors that they use were doing studies on this project. And what became apparent was that not only do they have the Gold Digger, that sherbet zone that's quite large, they also have a second zone that comes more horizontally and cuts across that sherbet zone. And it's a very big body. It doesn't have as many pierce points of drilling in it. So the grade and the thickness is not as well understood as it is in the sherbet. But I'm certainly seeing signs from their drilling that Bonanza it has the potential of being equally as important. But recently, in the latter part of the exploration season, they tagged into the sherbet and the Bonanza are in the sediments, okay, and below that are volcanics. And what they tagged into was the right below sherbet and Bonanza, in the volcanics, they hit very high grade in what they're calling their Golden Gate zone. And Golden Gate is likely part of a feeder that they also call their Golden Gate feeder. You know, when you get so much gold and mineralization into large areas like at sherbet and then at Bonanza, this is suggestive of a very large, powerful, long-lived, high-grade feeder system. And they've now tagged into what looks like that feeder in the Golden Gate zone. Some of the things that I find very important and impressive about the Golden Gate zone is that you look at how the sherbet zone goes at depth. And then you've got the Golden Gate, which is parallel to that sherbet zone and just offset somewhat from it, and in the volcanics. And I think that sherbet and the Golden Gate zone are part of the same system, and that they're at the very top, the distal or extension of that system. And yet in the distal portion of that system, in the extensions, you've got this very big body, a deposit at sherbet, and now it looks like they've tagged into the part that goes into the volcanics. But it's still likely a significant distance from the heat engine that created all this mineralization in the volcanics and in the sherbet zone. And so I think that the combination of sherbet and the Golden Gate zone are quite exceptional in the exploration business. But then they've got the Bonanza zone, which is more horizontal. And where that comes from, who knows, because that's a very big system as well. And is it part of the same system? Is it a different system? These things will be better understood by more drilling. And they'll also get a better understanding of it by the 100 holes that Goliath still has to report from this year's drilling. And I had a great talk with Roger Rosmus about the project itself and the recent results and the plans that they have and what they're doing to get the story out. Like Roger is in Zurich for the big mining conference that is happening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So tomorrow and the next couple of days after that. And he's out there telling the story and showing some of the drill core. And, there's a lot of smart money at those kind of conferences. And he's also going right the next week to the one-to-one conference. And as they get more results out, I think it will go right into the new year. And in the new year, you start a whole schedule of big conferences. The Roundup Conference of the Association of Mineral and Exploration, AME, is in January in Vancouver. They have the big mining conference there. There's another investor conference there during January. Then in March, you have the PDAC. And these give companies like a Goliath a chance to take their rock around and show the big companies out there what they have, big investors, retail investors. And as they do that, I think, and they look at what has been found so far, and what that indicates is deeper, is making for one of the best exploration stories out there. And I'm really happy to have them on as a sponsor of my shows. They're big supporters of the work I do, and I'm really happy to be able to talk to Roger on a regular basis. We keep in close contact, and I think that the Gold Digger project, and as well as the project, the ground that they have around it, is quite exceptional, and really is a tremendous discovery. And it's in one of the most prolific high-grade jurisdictions in the world, which is the Golden Triangle of British Columbia. At one time, it was host to the highest grade mine in the world, and I think that they could have one of the most important discoveries in decades in the Golden Triangle on their hands, and are putting out exceptional drill results. And I invite you to check out those the work that they do, and you can find that on their website. And I'm looking forward to do more interviews with Goliath, and I think it's a hell of a good exploration project. Okay, and another recent interview I did was with I-80 Gold, my friend Ewan Downey, who I've had the pleasure of doing many interviews with Ewan Downey. In fact, one of his first successes was Wolfden Resources, and that ultimately was bought out. And then they created Premier Gold by spinning out the gold assets to shareholders, and then building Premier up till it was taken over. And both of those companies were sponsors of my shows, and now I-80 Gold is as well. So Ewan and I have been around the block for a long time, and I've seen the success that Ewan has had building and selling two companies. And I really believe that I-80 Gold is going to be the biggest success that he's ever had. And part of the reason for that, as the headline you'll see there, is I-80 Gold making moves to develop Ruby Hill. Ruby Hill is host to what I think is more than one world-class deposit. It has they've drilled into a CRD system that is very high grade for the CRD metals, which is gold or silver, lead, and zinc. But then it also has an overprint of high grade gold. And collectively, this makes it some of the most valuable rock on a value in the ground value of metals anywhere in the business. But then what really got Ruby Hill started was they found what was called the Ruby Deeps. There was a historical pit there called the Archimedes Pit, and this was a historical producer. And the Ruby Hill, Ruby Deeps is found on the west side of that pit at depth. And as you get closer to surface, they also have the 426 zone, and then you've got the bottom of the pit. And so Ruby Deeps was very exciting to me, but then they found the CRD system, which is outstanding. And right beside the CRD on the east side of the pit is a skarn deposit that has very high grades as well. And then to that east of that, they found a new sulfide deposit, which looks quite exceptional. So you've got this remarkable project that has sulfide, skarn, CRD, and Carlin Gold all in one system in close proximity to each other. And then recently, i-80 Gold had their quarterly report. And in that quarterly report, they showed an image of what the underground workings, the plan is for the underground workings that they want to develop and to mine these various different deposits. Now, when it comes to the permitting of that underground, they currently have a permit for open pit mining. And so because they've got that permit, they can do an amendment to it, and which they're working on now. And this makes the permitting of a project like Ruby Hill much faster than if you were starting from scratch. And so, but then the big news was that recently that they did a deal, or they announced a let me get it up here. This will save me some time, so I make sure and I say it correctly. They let me pull it up here. Go over here, and I'm just going to stop share for a minute. Actually, it'll make it a little bit easier. I don't want to cancel. I want to go over here, and I'm just going to go to the i-80's website. So I don't want to. It's a bit of a touchy situation because they've entered into a non-binding term sheet with an unnamed company. Okay, so one of the reasons, there's strategic reasons why the company that they're talking to might not want their name out there. I'll leave that for others to discuss. But as it says actually, I'm going to go back to a screen share here. And as you can see, i-80 Gold, got to share it. i-80 Gold signs non-binding term sheet for the joint venture of the Ruby Hill property. And they're talking to an arm's length third party about a joint venture. They've signed a non-binding term sheet, and then they highlight all the great results that they've got, and you can get a bunch of details about the quality of the Ruby Hill project. And so when you see a non-binding term sheet with an unnamed company, of course, that creates a lot of interest, and The investors in the company and those watching it, they want to know who that unnamed company is and what the details are of that deal. And it's unnamed for a reason, and you can figure out what that reason is on your own. I think it's strategic. But what I talked to Ewan about was that, when they put out that information about the underground workings, obviously that's going to cost a lot of money. And is this associated? And that's what I think is the big point, is that the group that they're talking about is moving in the same direction, that they think that i-80 Gold needs to, and they're talking about how they're working on the paperwork and stuff to be able to publicly announce the structure of the deal and who's involved and all that sort of stuff. It's quite impressive. And so a lot of people are asking me, and who's the company, and I don't know who the company is. I certainly wouldn't ask you and who the company is, because I know the sensitivity of this sort of stuff. But what leads me to be confident is that I have known Ewan for over 20 years. He has two particular skills that I think are quite exceptional. He's a very good deal maker, and he gets projects at good prices and then enhances them with the exploration. The point that I think that gives me confidence in what is happening is that Ewan knows how to make good deals, and how to bring projects forward into building mines, and how to enhance projects with the drill rig. And I think that will be the ultimate result here, but it's not a result until it is a result. And so, of course, you have to do your own homework on that. But Ewan was very kind to come on and share with us what he could. And if you're interested in i-80 Gold, I think that interview is a good one for you to check out and learn more about what's going on there. And so another topic that's really got a lot of people's attention, and I want to talk about it, is back in October, on the 20, where is it here? Where is it here? Oh, this one. So back on October 22nd, I made Hercules Silver a pick of mine, and they've drilled one hole into what looks like a copper porphyry, and it's got very high grades of copper and gold and other metals in it. And I was very impressed with what I saw. In fact, the thumbnail here that YouTube picked up on is quite helpful in explaining what got my attention. Is I see a big geophysical anomaly here, an IP chargeability anomaly, but they didn't do it on the entire project. And this only gives them a certain amount of resolution. Over here, you see widespread sampling with widespread mineralization. And the question is that how big is this system? And I can certainly see the hallmarks of a big system, and that's why I made them a pick. I was very excited about the drill result, and the technical stuff that they had talked about. You got to bear in mind that they were looking at an IP anomaly that was underneath their silver zone, and that looked quite interesting. They poke a hole into it, and they find thick intersection of high grade copper. So it's one of those out of left field type discoveries, and it's created quite a stir in the industry. And they have a bunch more holes pending. And what really has got people enthusiastic recently was Barrick. They announced a deal where Barrick is investing over $20 million into Hercules Silver. And that's off of one drill hole. And for Barrick to get involved at that such an early stage is quite impressive on its own. And it caught people off guard, and also that it was at a premium to the market value at the time of the announcement, caught people by surprise. And so you've got Barrick Gold getting in there off of one drill hole, and putting a money in at a significant amount of money for Hercules Silver at a premium to market. And then they also were buying the stock prior to doing the private placement. So Barrick, to get so involved at such an early days, is quite indicative of the potential of this project. Let's leave it at that. I think it's quite important development. I've been following Barrick since they were a junior mining company, and I've seen their growth over the years. And they don't do this kind of stuff unless they see something that is quite impressive and has the potential to be very large. Now, some of the work they've got, you can see those little blue lines. The green one is one that was, when I did this, it was underway. I don't know if it's been finished yet, but then they've got these blue ones. They've only reported, I think it was 0.5, and they have about a handful of those that still need to be reported. And then this hole 26 over here that needs to be reported as well. So they have more assays pending. But what I'm also very excited about is they've done a more widespread geophysical survey over a much larger area. And you get to the limits of the geophysical survey right in here. And because it was a smaller survey, yes, you see these big anomalies coming right to the edge of the survey. And then on the other side of it, you've got all this mineralization from surface sampling, but you don't have the resolution going over into here of what this overall, this geophysical anomaly is. And so they're doing a larger geophysical anomaly. And this will give them a better idea of the overall target, and give them better resolution to be able to drill with more precision. And so they've got pending drill holes. They've got one hole underway that might be finished now. They've got the IP anomaly. They've got Barrick getting involved at a premium to market, and even being involved in the stock prior. And it's got the attention of everybody in the industry. Earlier I was talking about McEwen Mining and Rob McEwen doing some recent conferences where he shares the stage with Frank Justra, and they were talking about Hercules Silver at the Red Cloud conference, and as sort of a sign of what happens when a company does exploration. It can go from a tiny little company to a industry hot topic with one hole. That's the nature of exploration, and especially when you have success with that hole, and I think they will with more holes. I'm certainly happy to have picked them when I did. It's turned out to be a pretty good pick so far, and I think a lot more is pending that could grow the company even bigger. So as always, do your homework. They're not a sponsor. They're a pick at this point in time. And I think they're onto something very serious, and glad to have made them a pick before Barrick came in. Yeah, do your homework on Hercules Silver. BIG is their symbol. I like that symbol. I think it's a potential indicator of the future. Big is their stock symbol on the venture exchange. And so, yeah, that's some stuff I wanted to talk about because it's recent work that I've been doing. And I think there's a lot of good stuff to learn about from Rob McEwen. We talked about industry stuff and McEwen Mining and McEwen Copper specific. Goliath Resources, I think they have an exceptional story in their explorations success that they've had. A new story that I'm covering are I-80 Gold, which is, I think, a bigger company of the future that's making the steps to realize that potential. And then you've got a new discovery in Hercules Silver, which I pointed out to investors or for my audience before Barrick got involved. And now that Barrick's got involved, they've given people even more reason to learn more about that company. But there you go. I've got some shows in the can that I'm going to be putting out early next week. Always looking for more stories to talk about. I've got some picks and sponsors that I want to talk about. So look in your email box. You're going to be seeing a lot of stuff from me. Or if you follow me on Twitter, you'll find it there. And I do invite you to go to Substack because you can sign up for my free email to be on my email list. And I get, when I put new stuff out, always goes to the email right away. Okay, so now I got to do the disclaimers and stuff. You know, 2 of these companies were sponsors and 2 of them are not. Really, whether they're a sponsor or a pick, they go through the same filter, if you will. That filter is based on my 30 years of experience in the exploration and mining sector. And whether a company's a pick or a sponsor, they have to pass through those filters. And I try to do my homework and present that homework as in real time, if you will, through my shows, my sponsors' interviews, and non-sponsor interviews for that matter. And it's important for you to understand that sponsors pay me to help create content. And so, you know, I have a bias there, but I do try to keep all of my work within that framework of, you know, passing my filter based on my experience. I'm not making buying or selling recommendations. This show is for information purposes only. Before making any investment decision, it's important for you to speak with your financial advisors, to assess the your risk profile and whether the companies I talk about are suitable for you. You have to do your homework, and that's the big point I always try to make, is because I try to help with that process. I try to do interviews and do sector commentary that helps you to do that homework. And then I also advise you to go to the company's websites, check out their news releases, check out their corporate presentations, to do that homework. On that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.